A fight over disaster relief funding between Congress and the president has been brewing for months. But as Amna Nawaz tells us, the battle may reach a turning point in the coming days.
Well, President Trump and members of Congress have struggled to agree on a disaster aid bill that would address the needs of several states across the country as well as Puerto Rico. One of those states is Florida. Its panhandle community was devastated by Hurricane Michael 7 months ago, but the state needs more funding to continue its recovery. A relief package is currently stalled in the Senate as senators attempt to find a solution that President Trump will sign before Memorial Day weekend. To talk to us about where things stand, I'm joined by Republican Senator Rick Scott of Florida. He was the state's governor when Hurricane Michael made landfall. Senator Scott, welcome back to the NewsHour. Thanks for making the time. I want to ask you now about that bill. The House passed. It was a $17 billion disaster relief package last week. It's now up to the Senate, as I mentioned, to see it through. Will you vote for it?
Well, let's see if what ends up on the Senate floor. Here's what's frustrating. We're 218 days since Hurricane Michael hit our state. It was devastating. It was a Category 5. And put things in perspective, after Katrina, I think it took something like 10 days for a disaster relief bill to be done. Andrew, the last Category 5 to hit our country, it was in South Florida, was 34 days. Sandy took 74 days. It's so frustrating that, everybody can't come together and get something done. We all care about our states. We all care about Puerto Rico. So I don't know why people can't come together and say, let's put our differences aside and spend our time getting this done. We've got to get this done before the Memorial break.
Senator, would you vote for the bill in its current form?
Well, what I've supported is a bill that, one, has accountability. I don't want to waste any money. But the bill that's in the House, I don't believe it ever will make it to the floor of the Senate.
So what would you want to change about what's in there right now? The bill that's right there has funding for Mexico Beach, Panama City. It helps to rebuild Tyndall Air Force Base. The thing that's been holding it up is the president's objection to the fact that it also has funding for Puerto Rico. Do you object to that?
Well, first off, let's put it in perspective. Here's what's been frustrating to me. Chuck Schumer has basically blocked the bill in the Senate. This is something that my first words I said on the Senate floor was about how we've got to take care of Puerto Rico. I went there 8 times as governor. I've been there once as a U.S. Senator. We've got to provide money for Puerto Rico, and we got to make sure we have accountability, and that's what I propose. We got to make sure we don't waste the money. Everybody I talk to in Puerto Rico agrees with me. We don't want to waste any money. We want to get the money to get to the families that have been hurt. And why don't we get this done? But right now, it's been basically shut down the Senate by Chuck Schumer.
Well, Senator, the idea that money is being wasted in Puerto Rico is something the president has been saying again and again. Right now, it seems as if it is stalled because there is money for Puerto Rico in this bill. What do you say to your constituents who are still waiting for aid money they desperately need because the president doesn't want money to go to Puerto Rico?
Well, what I want to do the things that are going to help Puerto Rico. Step one, I fought to get the $600 million in for the food nutrition program. And then I heard what the president said. So I wanted not just for Puerto Rico, but for every place else. Let's put the parameters in to make sure the money is not spent, and let's get the money out as quickly as we can. And that's what I've been pushing in the Senate. But again, this is something that for whatever reason, Chuck Schumer has basically shut down any conversation to get something done here.
I hear you blaming Chuck Schumer. Do you also blame the president for holding this up?
Well, look, we could pass it. We don't have to have the president to pass a bill in the Senate. But Chuck, Senator Shelby has had a bill. It seems like now for months, or it seems like since I got up here, and Chuck Schumer will not let the Democrats vote for it. Why don't we support our bill and get the House and the Senate to sit down and figure out how to work together? The president doesn't have the opportunity to sign anything until we pass something. So let's pass it and figure out where we are.
Let me ask you something about some disclosures made earlier this week about 2 Florida counties that were hacked during the 2016 election. The FBI won't publicly disclose which those 2 counties were. Do you know which 2 they were?
Absolutely. I had a briefing yesterday from the FBI, and what I wanted to understand is what happened. So as we know, in the Mueller report, they said, I think what they said in that was 1 county was hacked by the Russians. So I wanted to understand what happened there. And then my opponent in 2018, Bill Nelson, last summer said the Russians were free to move around our election system. They were free to change the voter registration, things like that. And at that point, I asked the Department of Homeland Security and the FBI, I said, so is any of this true? Because I want to make sure we have as governor, and my job as governor is to make sure we have elections where if you have a right to vote, I want you to vote, but I don't want there to be any fraud. They confirmed, one, that 2 counties had been hacked. They've said for national security reasons that would be harmful to national security that they're not going to release the names of those. And so based on law, I can't release those names. I want them, I'm from the Sunshine State. We've got a lot of sunshine laws to disclose things. So I've asked them to do that whenever they, the earliest they can to release those, but they're not ready to do that right now. But they also confirmed that what Bill and Nelson said they had no evidence of. They told me that last year, and they confirmed that now that the Russians and nobody changed the results of 2016 or 2018.
Well, let me ask you this. Voters are obviously hearing this news and they are worried that enough is not being done to make sure their votes will count. So what can you tell them now about what you're doing to make sure the same thing doesn't happen in 2020?
Sure. So as a governor, what I did is I added more cybersecurity experts at the state level. The way it's set up in Florida, we have a state secretary of state's office and separately elected local supervisor elections, and then we sent money down to each of our supervisor elections to make sure they could do the same thing, and then we worked with them to make sure that there was nothing that impacted the elections. One thing the FBI and Homeland Security said yesterday is that Florida was a great partner of theirs to try to make sure that, one, our systems weren't hacked, and number two, that to the extent they were, which they said happened in 2016, that it didn't impact the results, which is what they said.
Senator Scott, we just have a minute left, but I want to ask you about immigration. The president unveiled a new immigration proposal in the Rose Garden today. In your state, you have over 100,000 Dreamers or DACA recipients, people who were brought here as children. There was no protection nor plan for them in the president's proposal today. So what is your message to those more than 100,000 residents of Florida today?
Well, we're an immigration state. I've been very supportive of making sure that the DACA kids, we take care of them. We also need to we have a lot of people with TPS. We need to have a permanent fix for TPS. And on top of that, we've got to secure our border. So we've got to have a package that, in my opinion, one, secures our border to stop the problems we're dealing with. We love legal immigration, but not illegal immigration. We're an immigration state. But we've got to take care of the DACA kids, and we have to have a permanent fix for TPS.
Senator Rick Scott of Florida, thank you very much for being with us today.
Thank you.